another Montessori Music webinar. We are delighted to welcome Kate Unsworth, who will share with us her thoughts and experiences of gender stereotyping. This is a topic which actually haunts us every single day, because almost every single day something happens which reminds us that we could be better at this. Some of our habits are so engendered in our language that we need to be really very, very thoughtful about how we express ourselves, not to pass some of our own idiosyncrasies onto the children. But Kate knows much more about the topic than I do. She not only works in a nursery, she is a deputy manager at Unity Montessori in North London, but she also has got a 7-year-old daughter, Zelda, who is being brought up in the best possible way by her mum, and who is very outspoken. So I'm sure that we will have some of Zelda's thoughts included in this webinar. What we will do as usual is to have Kate do her presentation, and then we will break out into breakout rooms and explore some of the questions that Kate has thought about, and we will come back together to share our experiences, our ideas, and some of the key points from the discussions. So Gwendolyn in Montessori Musings will make sure that our technical part works as always. Thank you very much, Gwendolyn. And I hand over to Kate.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I've put together a little PowerPoint, which I think Gwendolyn is going to try and get up on our screens now. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So yes, thank you so much for coming. It is a real privilege, as always, to speak to everybody here. It's lovely to see some smiling familiar faces on my screen. So thank you for joining those who know me. And for those of you who don't, as Barbara said, I'm Kate. I am the Deputy Manager at Unity Montessori in North London. And I am just almost about 8,000 words away from completing my BA in Montessori Early Childhood Studies at Anglia Ruskin University. The reason I mention this is that for my undergraduate major project, I've been researching LGBTQ+ inclusion in Montessori early years environments. Throughout this study, it's brought up a lot about unconscious stereotyping and bias within the classrooms and the harm that can be caused when stereotypes go unchallenged. Thanks, Gwendolyn, for the next slide. So gender stereotyping is a term I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, but are we all aware of the effects of gender stereotyping on young children in the early years? Do we always recognise the overt and the unconscious ways in which our words and actions, as well as our inaction, may be perpetuating these stereotypes with the children in our care? So what is gender stereotyping? Well, UNICEF define it as ascribing certain attributes, characteristics and roles to people based on their gender. But I believe a better definition is the ascribing of traditional gender expectations to a person based on the biological sex assigned to them at birth. For the next slide, please. And before we go any further, I do believe it's important that we clarify a couple of these terms. Although sex and gender are often used interchangeably, they are in fact two very different things. Sex concerns the physiological and biological aspects of a person, such as their reproductive organs and their hormones. Typically, these fall into one of two categories, male and female. I would really like to mention at this point, this is not actually always the case. And if anybody is interested in learning more about the complexities of biological sex, I've put a little link in the PowerPoint, which I think you'll be getting. There's a brilliant TED talk on the complexities of intersex with Emily Quinn, so do give that a watch. But for sake of simplicity and for what we're discussing this evening, gender typically is male or female. But gender is something entirely separate from one's physical characteristics. Gender is concerned with social roles and responsibilities which children observe, are informally taught, and absorb from their environment and the people around them. This includes how they believe they should interact with the world, who they are, and what they might aspire to be based purely on their sex. Thank you, Wendelin. It is now widely recognised that gender is a social construct. It exists because humans agree that it exists. And this current construct has served the patriarchy, depicting women as weak, vulnerable, and in need of protection, and men as brave, strong, and capable providers. Therefore, characteristics such as being gentle, demure, and subservient have been attributed to the female, and men who exhibit these characteristics known as effeminate, while strength and masculinity have become tropes of strength and bravery, have become tropes of masculinity. It's when these ideas are played out in society that gender inequality persists. It limits opportunities and creates barriers for individuals who do not conform to traditional gender roles. Acknowledging that these stereotypes are becoming increasingly outdated, we can begin to unpick traditional gender roles, such as women as housewives and men as breadwinners. As society becomes more diverse, accepting, and inclusive, we can recognize that each of us are able to experience and exhibit all emotions, and we are all capable of achieving whatsoever we put our mind to, as long as we get a fair and equitable footing on the ladder. And of course, the beauty here with gender, as with every socially constructed concept, we all, as active members of society, have the power to deconstruct it. Thank you, Wendelin. So, despite having this knowledge and despite the work of gender equality advocates, traditional gender stereotypes are still pervasive within society. Our Montessori environments act as a microcosm of that society. So what are we seeing in our classrooms that we can readily identify as gender stereotyping or gender bias? Now, this can be wide-ranging, and of course, some of you might be semi-smugly sitting there, knowing that you've done your homework, and many of these examples may have already been eradicated from your spaces. And if so, that is absolutely amazing. But I'm sure that even the most conscientious of us are still seeing some examples of gender stereotyping, if not from us and our staff, then from parents, carers, and from the children themselves. I've had little boys come to school with the most awful looking bump or bruise. And when I ask their parent what happened, I'll get a story about a big kid in the soft play, lamping little Joshua with a Thomas the Tank Engine toy. Invariably, the story ends with, oh, you know, boys will be boys and a chin up lad, which is the cue for wide-eyed 2-year-old Joshua to look at me and tell me how brave he was, how he didn't cry much, and how he got a big boy sticker. Now, on the surface, these comments might seem harmless. Yes, we all know children get hurt, and most of us know it is a miracle if anybody leaves Clowntown without a minor injury. But what are the underlying gender messages in this short exchange at the door? That boys are boisterous, clumsy perhaps? That it's okay that an older boy used unkind hands with Joshua because he's a boy and he can or should be able to take it? That boys shouldn't express sadness or pain? That boys are expected to be brave, even in the face of a bloody nose? What lessons is Joshua learning about what it is to be a boy? What he needs to do to be a good and proper boy? Equally, I've been settling in little girls and I've headed straight for the home corner or the book corner or the art table without thinking, do I do the same with the boys? Or do blocks and trains and dinosaurs come to mind? Now, I am sure when we're settling new children, most of us are going off their unique child form. And yes, the girl's parents may have told me that she likes books and painting and dressing up, as these are the toys she plays with at home. But she may also like dragons and cars and Duplo. She just might not have had the opportunity to realise it yet. As educators, and more specifically as Montessori teachers, we all know the importance of the first 6 years of life and the power of early influences on the formation of the child. This is also a key time in a child's life when they begin to develop gender awareness. Research demonstrates that children become gender aware as early as the age of 2, and their perceptions of gender depend on how it's understood within their family, their schools, their community, and society at large. These perspectives will then directly impact a child's own ability to form who they are, how they relate to other people, and how they relate to their environment. And as soon as children discover gender, they become like little detectives, and they try to learn as much as possible about the traits and characteristics of the group to which they have been assigned. And then they try as much as possible to replicate these. As soon as a child understands what gender they fit into, they will naturally gravitate toward the categories that have been thrust upon them from birth. That's why from the age of about 2, girls tend to navigate more towards pink things, while boys will try and avoid them. It is of no surprise that preschool children learn to identify with gender so young, especially as parents and friends tend to give toys associated with their gender from very, very early on. I know when I had my daughter, all we got were bunnies. Bunnies, bunnies, bunnies. Friends of mine that had boys, no bunnies. Once children understand what gender tribe they belong to, then they become more responsive to gender labels. I'm going to share a little video with you now. Some or all of you probably have seen it, but I do think it is worth a rewatch, particularly in terms of thinking about the power of unconscious stereotyping and also the role that we as adults play. Thanks, Wendelin. If you can click on the link.
Look at this. Look at this. Do you like a dolly? Shall we go for the dolly? There's a good girl. You're a good little girl, aren't you, Sophie? Look, what does this say? Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ooh, look at this, Sophie. Meow, meow. I think she liked that pink dolly the best.
If I were to tell you actually that Sophie is Edward,
Ah.
does that change anything?
I maybe thought, oh, this is a little girl, so I have to give her little girl things.
Hello. 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 Come on.
What's this one? What's that one do? Is that a robot? What about this? You like that one? What does this one do? Oliver. Oliver.
You've gone for, you could say, boy toys for this boy.
Possibly in my subconscious, but for me, I was just going for what was around me, but then perhaps my subconscious was automatically playing a trick on me that I was...
If I tell you that he is actually a girl.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I suppose it's because of the stereotype.
And then that changed your behaviour towards the child.
It did.
And your behaviour was quite directive.
1, 2, 3.
Beep, 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 beep. Do you want to see my robot?
She's picked out the robot, the car, the puzzle game. And I think she's been much more physical in handling the child than the other adults have been with girls.
That really astounded me because I thought that I was somebody that had a really open mind.
Surprise. So I automatically went for the pink fluffy toy because I said it was a girl, so I was sort of stereotyping.
I've always thought I was rather more open-minded than that, and I would think, you know, these are children's toys, whatever the gender.
It will make me think the next time I'm with a child, so my niece or my nephew, to make sure that I am actually being sort of fair and equal with all of them, and just giving each child an opportunity to just be whoever they are.
Yeah, I find that Super interesting. I love the the baby's face in the beginning. She's like, I'm not having any of this. I'm having the robot. Yeah. So I mean, obviously they are not trained teachers, but you know, all kinds of adults interact with children. You know, not only us, and sometimes we're getting it wrong too. So food for thought, I think. Okay, for the next slide, please, Wendelin. Now, we all know that children develop interest and refine their skills by playing. There is a ton of research out which tells us that block play encourages problem solving, mathematical thinking, logic, and physical exertion, whereas playing with dolls inspires empathy and caregiving. Offering both types of play to all children within our spaces is highly recommended. However, even if we are not actively targeting boys and girls differently, by the time they reach our classrooms, they will already know which toys they are and which they are not supposed to play with. I think if you click again, another photo comes up. Hopefully, yes, there we are. There's our lovely classroom. And this really is where the beautiful Montessori materials come along and somewhat save the day. Montessori is already cited as being a less gendered approach to early education than other pedagogies. Due to our focus on giving children first-hand experiences with real tools, there is less space for those traditionally gendered toys to enter our environments. However, these days, especially in wraparound or full daycare settings, I'm sure we all have little bits of all kinds of toys. We certainly have a role play area, we have blocks, we have train tracks. However, by focusing on materials and activities, we are able to challenge pre-constructed ideas about gender roles. I've seen boys who will not enter the home corner and play with the toy kitchen for love nor money. But when given the opportunity to cut fruits and vegetables, to knead dough, to put toppings on their own pizzas, these boys are often first at the table with no thought of cooking being a girl's activity. Equally, when given opportunity to saw and chop and hammer wood during forest school sessions, our girls are just as enthusiastic as the boys. Even the pink tower being pink helps to challenge constructed ideas about girls and boys' toys. I'm sure you all have a lot of examples too, and hopefully we can share some of those in the breakout rooms later, because all of this goes to show that we can utilize Montessori's philosophy and materials to begin to unpick the threads of gender stereotyping that children have already learned and that they continue to experience outside the walls of our classroom. Next slide, please. Having looked at the environment as an aid to deconstructing stereotypical gender roles, I would now like us to turn our attention to another aspect of the Montessori dynamic triangle, us. Montessori speaks of the spiritual preparation of the teacher, how we must root out deeply ingrained prejudices and ideas. And to me, this means committing to becoming a lifelong learner myself, to constantly evaluate my beliefs and to critically examine my practice alongside what's happening in the wider world. Many of us will have been raised believing in the gender binary and not seeing its influence on social inequality. But now we know better, and it is important that we adapt ourselves in order to break this cycle. The ways in which we interact with the children in our care has massive effects on their sense of self, their ideas about the world, and their place in it. So how do we ensure that we are passing along the right kinds of messages? Now, I'd like to draw your attention to the diagram there, the pie chart on the screen. Experts have proven that 93% of our communication is nonverbal. So what are our gestures, body language, and facial expressions saying to children? Do we greet girls with a cuddle and boys with a high five or a fist bump? Do we offer the same level of response when a boy falls over as a girl? Is there a softness that we extend to little girls that is not made readily available to preschool boys? Now, the aspect of the chart that I find utterly fascinating is the pink wedge, tone of voice. Think for a moment about how you greet the children in the morning. Do we raise our voice and soften it when we say, "Hello, Aria"? And do we lower in pitch when complimenting Thomas on his great dinosaur jumper? I've recently been reflecting on this a lot, and it is amazing how we change our tone of voice depending on who we talk to. And I wonder what effect that has on the recipient. Now, I'm not suggesting that we adopt a monotonous tone with the children. Vocal play and range is essential for them to hear. But can we be more mindful and more intentional about how we use our voices? Can we tell Aria that we like her cool new trainers? And can we say to Thomas that we're sorry he was sad saying bye-bye to mummy? Now, of course, it's not just how we say things that matters. Our words are of great importance. And while words may only make up 7% of our total communication, we know that young children are in the sensitive period for language, and the words we use are being absorbed and repeated as they develop their own communication skills. Therefore, it is vital that we are choosing our words carefully. Is it our first intention, as Barbara mentioned in her blog, to call little girls pretty and draw attention to their looks? Now, I don't think there's anything wrong in drawing attention to aesthetics, but are we doing it equally with boys and girls? Do we tell a little boy that we love his beautiful smile? And if not, why not? Are we looking to complement all aspects of the child? And here, as we are looking to be equitable, to give the children what they might not be receiving elsewhere, maybe we need to turn the tables a little bit. Maybe we need to give more positive reinforcement to the caring actions of our boys and celebrate more the strength and bravery of our girls. Thank you, Wendelin. Now, we discussed earlier about gender as a binary being a social construct. Gender, if anything, should be seen on a spectrum, as many people, adults and children alike, do not identify wholly with one thing or another. We know now that gender is fluid and changeable. Early childhood should be the perfect time for children to be able to safely explore gender roles without facing discrimination. It is our job to give children a safe space to explore their identity and all the feelings they may have. This is essential at all ages and stages, but particularly true within the first plane of development. I read a magnificent article by Terry Hennessy and Sarah Bloomberg in Montessori Life from a few years ago. And they say, as teachers, it is our job to educate children. And as Montessori teachers, we know that this is more than teaching reading, writing, and numeracy. We teach social skills and independent thought, conflict resolution. We teach peace. We teach children about the world, and we show them how to embrace what makes them unique and how to be their very best selves. And they go on to say that part of this work is making sure that we expose children to the wonderful diversity that is all around them. And this includes all the amazing and different people in their immediate community. And specifically, if they do not live in a very diverse community, it is letting them see the diversity that exists without their community and outside of their experience. And since children are naturally inclined to conform to what they see around them, we as educators need to do our best to break the existing gender stereotypes and provide children with varied narratives about who they can be. Practically, this means us thinking about how we may be perpetuating binary forms of gender. Are we asking children to line up, girls on one side and boys on another? Are we using the term girls and boys? Can we change that language? Can we say friends? Can we say children? Can we say my esteemed colleagues? Are we using titles for our staff? Miss, Ms, Mrs, maybe a Mr? Personally, I prefer to be on first name terms with the children. I find it less hierarchical in the classroom, but also thinking about this in terms of gender binary. If you have children or staff members that don't identify wholly with Mr. or Mrs, using those titles immediately excludes them. The quote here on the slide really says everything for me. This was said by a gender expansive child, about a gender expansive child, I should say, that when somebody with the authority of a teacher describes the world and you're not in it, there is a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked in a mirror and saw nothing. I just find that incredibly heavy, and I am sure that none of us would ever want to make any child in our care feel that way. So while it might be a little annoying to reevaluate our ingrained linguistic choices, if this relatively small change can allow gender expansive children and adults feel seen within our spaces, I do believe it is 100% worth the effort. Thank you, Wendelin. Next slide. So we have looked at our environments and our language in the classroom. And before I finish, I am finishing, I promise, I did want to look at some other ways in which we can actively challenge gender stereotypes. Storytelling activities and the book corner offer excellent opportunities for children to explore worlds akin to their own, as well as to visit realms of the unknown. Having a book corner that is well stocked with a variety of high quality literature, which meaningfully portrays the lives of people, characters from non-normative backgrounds, introduces children to a wider spectrum of ideas, concepts and perspectives. Some of these stories might be featuring same-sex couples. Some may be centered around challenging gender stereotypes. The book corner allows us to offer mirror and windows into the lives of our children. And it's a resource I really think we can all be using to its fullest extent all the time. We can also provide positive depictions of people challenging gender roles. We can have photographs of female construction workers in our block play area, have people visit the nursery, female firefighters, male nurses, drag story time. This is an amazing opportunity for children to have first-hand experience of a diverse representation of gender expression, which is vital for them to develop empathy and understanding, as well as their own sense of self and how they belong within society. We can consider what kind of role models we're being. As we are in a female-dominated caregiving industry, we are already reinforcing a certain stereotype, but we can challenge other gender expectations. For example, as Hannah will attest to, I ride to work on a very big, noisy black motorbike. And this has been a brilliant conversation starter about what women can and cannot, or should and should not do. Montessori has taught us that children have the ability to understand huge concepts if they are delivered sensitively and appropriately. So we need to prepare to have these big conversations with children. And it's not as hard as we might think. To finish my part this evening, I'm going to leave you with another video. This one honestly makes me cry every time I watch it. I just think it is a beautiful example that children are truly humanity's greatest hope for peace and for equality. Thank you, Gwendolyn.
Jeg heter Selma, og jeg heter Martin. Jeg heter Ask. Jeg heter Victoria. Jeg heter Lars. Og jeg heter Felicia.
Nå har jeg en liten jobb til dere. Jeg tenkte dere skulle putte de blå ballene i den ene vasen, og de rosa i den andre.
Okay. Skal vi ta rosa i den og blå i den da? Nei. Omvendt. Blå i denne.
Men nå skal dere få belønningen deres.
Oi. Hva er dette for noe? Hva er dette for noe?
Ok, nå kan dere åpne øynene.
Oi. Hva? Jeg fikk litt mer.
Molly, grunnen til at du har fått mindre enn Thomas, det er faktisk fordi du er jente.
Det er kjemperart. Det er ikke bra. Det er skikkelig urettferdig.
Hva tenker du, Felicia?
Vi har jobbet helt likt, og så får vi ikke det samme. Vi var like flinke, og vi burde få like mye.
Hvorfor det?
Fordi ellers så blir det urettferdig. Det er liksom ikke forskjell på jente og gutt, da. Jeg tenker at det er feil.
Hvorfor er det feil?
Jenter er ikke mindre verdt enn gutter. Det har ikke noe å si hvis man er gutt eller jente. Sånn, jeg tror det er litt mye da. Nei. Nå har vi like mye. Nå har vi like mye.
Thank you, Kate. Are you done?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Children, thank you very much. Lots of thought-provoking ideas. I still hold in my head the idea that the child who doesn't see him or herself in the classroom is like looking in the mirror and seeing nothing. And that is so powerful, because recently I have showed the face of a 3-month-old baby to herself in the mirror. She knew it's not her, but she loved to see the face. And I think that is, we all love to be included. Thank you very much for your questions for our breakouts. And I think because of the number of us, we are going to be in 2 groups tonight. So let's think about the questions, discuss the instances of gender stereotyping you have noticed in your environments, whether it came from practitioners, parents, carers, children themselves, and how you managed it. I think it is how we manage it that is very, very important, because it will happen. It is, and we will not always manage it right, but we need to be aware that we can manage it better. Practical or personal resources you have in the classroom to combat gender stereotypes, and your favorite books. And I hope some of you have managed to bring some of your books so that you can share them in the breakouts. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions to the discussions. I wonder if Hannah and Marion would like to feedback from their group.
Hello, everyone. Shall I start, Marion?
Yeah, and finish if you want. I'm just going to pass it over to you. No,
okay. I will. Thank you very much, Kate, for prompting our discussion. It was really wonderful just to have the chance amongst trusted friends to be able to discuss this and share some of our shortcomings, and also just to think about how we can support each other. We had examples of how practitioners supported children to understand difference. For example, when boys come into the setting with very long hair and other children question their identity, and how we can support children in that. And also just Sonia gave brought a lovely book along called My Shadow is Pink. which seems like a really lovely title. I can put that in the chat, but she talked us through that and ways that we can support each unique child and their differences. And we also talked a lot about how we can share ideas with parents, as well as the staff team, because sometimes that can be a challenge as well. And it was just really helpful to be able to talk through some of those issues. So thank you. Anything else, Marion?
I think we also touched on using situations to turn things around. So using books that maybe aren't so politically correct or aren't showing more current thinking. I mentioned the tiger who came to tea, and using that storyline, which has some very stereotypical roles, you know, dad coming back home and sorting it all out and taking everyone out to tea, to show, you know, that this is one view and what else could have happened, and helping the children to widen their views of some of the books that are available, to think in a different way. And we talked about the uniqueness of children, the uniqueness of people, and I think to me that's key to our Montessori work. You know, we see children as individuals and therefore should see them as they are and help them to understand how they are. Sonia also talked about, you know, a particular school who was sending home books and literature that maybe wasn't so helpful and wasn't so open-minded, and what a particular parent should do about that. And, you know, we talked about challenging. It's important to challenge, because if we don't challenge, we're not going to affect change. So it's important about having that passion to go in and say, can I ask you why this book is being used for all the children to read, and just question it. But then if it is said, you know, you have to use this book, then using it in a slightly different way, a different angle, to actually question with your child. So what do you think about what this book is telling us? You know, not everything that we read is 100% correct. So it's about having that ability to think, yeah, I can read it, it's in paper there, but I don't know that I agree with it, and being able to challenge it in that way. But yeah, lovely to work with my friend Hannah and to see Kate, you know, and so many of you. But yeah, that was it, I think. You've covered everything else.
Thank you, guys. Suzanne?
But quite interesting, because we normally tend to have similar conversations across the rooms, and it seems that this time we had some different conversation. In our room, I think, Kate, the first thing that everybody was quite happy about was that, thank goodness, we had Montessori materials that were not gendered in any way. So that gave a sense of relief. But yeah, you know, still having that moment, one of the participants in our room shared that a parent asked, you know, whether we celebrating all the festivals, are we going to celebrate gay pride? You know, and what happens, how do we answer that question in that moment when it comes as an unexpected question? You know, and what is the right age? Is it the right age at 2 years and at 3 years to open these possibilities up to the children? And it was quite interesting that as the conversation went on, that question was kind of answered, because, you know, then we sort of said, well, we're already introducing the children to all different cultures when we do our studies of the world, you know, and different religions. So is it different to now speak about, you know, introducing them to different genders or family setups and that type of thing? We also touched on the older children. We had one participant in our room speaking about, you know, how different it is with older children who are now amongst themselves questioning, you know, whether they're attracted to one. So my language is also not quite correct. So I'm not sure if I'm using sex or gender in the correct way, but you know, whether they're attracted to the one or to the other, and how they could find out and what to do, and just the adult's responsibility at that point in potentially not leading the child in any particular direction, but being in support of the child in whatever decision that the child is taking. And then the last thing I think that we also explored for quite a bit was that unconscious continuation of a stereotype, you know, where we have one of the participants in a school where the bathrooms are painted pink and blue. And, you know, because girls go to one and boys go to another, and at some point they need to know. And just really the thought of not necessarily having thought about it because it was just there. And, you know, that is what one does. And the quote that you gave, really having given a lot of thought and opened the door to a lot of thought. So yeah, it was a fabulous conversation. Very sad, Wendelin, when you cut us off. We were just getting started.
But Kate, the one question which came up, in fact, came from a parent who today asked the head of the school that she would really like her 3-year-old to be introduced to the concept of transgender. And I mean, we are all grappling with this. We are all trying to find how we would deal with it in general way, how we would deal with it on a personal way, in all sorts of ways. Would you have any advice? How would you tackle it?
Yes, so first of all, I would go away and I would do some reading. I think that, you know, it's really easy for us in the moment to give an answer, you know, to give an answer to a parent, you know, the gay pride question, or to, you know, to learn about trans off the cuff. But I think really it is advisable for us to say, I'm not really sure how I can do that at this moment. Can I take this question away with me? And then I would suggest going away and researching it. Definitely it can be done. Definitely it can be done sensitively. I wish I had longer arms. I've got an excellent book which was written by about 20 young American educators, all about gender expansive children, how to introduce transgender. Can I grab the book? Give me 2 seconds. Thank you for your patience. Yes, so this is Supporting Gender Diversity in Early Childhood Classrooms. I can probably send a link or something. And it's just really useful. It's a practical guide. That is the way, and it's written for early years teachers. And it covers some gender stereotyping. It covers how to broach these huge topics with children, with parents. And I would really go to this. I'm not really an expert in how we would begin. I think we would talk about how we feel in ourselves, and you know, we need to make our own decisions as well, because the trans issue, if you are looking at gender as a binary, it's one way to explain trans issues. If you are looking at gender as a spectrum, and the idea that trans needs to be present because of the social construct of gender in a binary form, it all gets very deep. And I think maybe Sid can come one day and give you a very in-depth talk about it rather than me. But yes, I would go to literature. I would go to seek support from experts, and then use your skills. You've got so many skills as an early years educator, as a Montessorian, to make it relevant to your children and to your community.
Very wise advice. Thank you so very much. I wonder if there are any questions from the floor or any thoughts people would like to share with us. Lucy?
Just a quick question. In England, in the schools, are the children's bathrooms, you have to have boys and girls, or are they mixed together in the regulation?
We don't have a regulation to segregate the loose at nursery. And, you know, if you think about exploration of Freudian theory, a month ago, the finding out which how I go to the loo as a 3 or 4 year old is a fundamental human right, I think, and that teaches you more about gender than lots of other things, but that's taking it in a very, looking at it in a very light-hearted manner. But I'm very glad that there is no requirement in the UK to segregate boys and girls for loos. However, if you go to a school, a proper school that also has a nursery, you know, primary and secondary, and has a nursery, you will often find that the loos are already segregated then.
Good.
Good. Well, we look forward to seeing you all in a month's time, when we will go back to our theme of child development, and we will be exploring some of the current thinking about children's development and current thinking about how to support children's individual development whilst also nurturing a spirit of community and solidarity within the group with whom you work. So have a lovely break for Easter when it comes, and we will see you on the Tuesday after Easter. I think it's the 26th or something like that. So see you then. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Kate, very, very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone. Take care.